Layer 0 and Wormhole combined are like huge VC-backed projects, literally over $500 million raised by these two, have pushed this cross-chain dApps narrative for years. But like anybody listening, they can probably think of one, maybe two cross-chain dApps that have like really hit their stride and worked at scale. And this is because it's really hard to build these things. And most companies in crypto right now don't have product market fit. So taking a 4-month detour to go and make it so that it's easier for people to use your application across these different chains is not rational. And so a lot of people just don't do it.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it will be more accessible in the future then?
Yeah, it 100% will be, because
today's guests are the Omni co-founders, Austin King, CEO, and Tyler Tarsi, CTO. Omni just had its mainnet launch recently, and essentially the blockchain wants to make Ethereum more integrated. They also launched a fun little campaign recently, which I'll let them talk about themselves. Austin is also our first repeat guest, if you remember him from earlier in the year. He was also my first guest in the studio. And of course, I'm excited to have Tyler here as well. So guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Excited to be here.
yeah, thank you for having us.
Excited to have you. I've asked Austin in the past how he got into the space, so we won't do that question. How did you two meet, come about, why Omni?
How did we meet? You want to tell the...
Yeah, well, we've been friends for over 10 years at this point. We met in university, and we were friends there. And then after university, I was in, we were both in San Francisco, actually. And he was working on crypto all the way back in 2016. I was doing machine learning and quant trading, that kind of stuff, and then got interested in crypto around 2019, 2020. And that was right around when we kind of rekindled our friendship and started exploring DeFi together. And I guess the rest is history.
Yeah.
You concur?
That is largely accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
And why Omni? What is Omni? Let's start there.
What is Omni? So from a technical perspective, it's two things. One, it's a cross-chain messaging protocol specifically built for Ethereum. And it's an EVM, like it's a chain itself. At large, though, the reason that we built it was because Ethereum is scaled through fragmenting across all these different rollups. And really the whole goal here is to make Ethereum feel like just one chain again. That's kind of the TLDR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, the Ethereum landscape has changed a lot. I feel like from the early ICO days, it was Ethereum, you build on it, and now there's all these different chains, a lot of fragmentation. How do you kind of look at the landscape from maybe day one to today?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually why we ended up building Omni. Back in 2021, we built a DeFi protocol. It was called Rift. It was a structured financial product that we launched on Ethereum Layer 1. And we did pretty well. We hit our $50 million TVL cap in the first couple of days of launch. And then we were considering how to scale it out to the L2 ecosystem, which at the time was just Arbitrum and Optimism.
Mm-hmm.
And even at that time, as a smart contract developer, we were faced with all of these trade-offs that weren't great. It's like, okay, do we go to Optimism where we could probably get a grant? Do we go to Arbitrum where there's a lot of DeFi activity already? Neither of those options are great because we would have to limit ourselves to the users and capital in that ecosystem. And so another option we considered was just rebuilding our protocol from scratch with some cross-chain messaging protocol that existed. But then we'd be introducing security trade-offs, and there's a ton more smart contract complexity. So we took a step back. We were like, all right, this is clearly not end state. What is the ideal state for smart contract developers? And what is it going to look like in 5 years? And that's when we started kind of researching L2s and interoperability, and ultimately came up with the idea for Omni. So
when was that?
That was around a year and a half ago. Well, we launched the DeFi protocol around 3 years ago, and scaled it out, and then moved to Omni in early 2023.
You guys didn't want to keep the name Rift?
Nah, Omni's better. 4 characters is good, but Omni is better than Rift. Rift is also it has negative connotations, like
Rift.
splitting, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think rifting's a word, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was also the original, even before the structured financial product I was mentioning, we were doing some interest rate splitting. So the name Rift made a lot of sense for that protocol. I mean, then, what we were building evolved, and the name Rift stuck, and you're like, all right, let's get a hard reset here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So from then to now, what do you think has evolved in a good way for Ethereum? Because I feel like there's a lot of like complaints about the Ethereum ecosystem, which is fair. I got my own complaints too.
Yeah.
But there's also, positives, and there's developments. I feel like scaling has gotten better, maybe infrastructure. I'm going to let you two talk to it better than I would, though.
Yeah, I mean, at large, I think the biggest improvement we've seen is simply scaling, just like more throughput, lower fees for transactions. Is there anything else that's
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. We've scaled Ethereum.
Yeah.
It has been roughly a success. Like you see rollups like Base that are super cheap, super fast, and have a ton of transaction throughput. This is horizontal scaling, and it's working. It just introduces new big problems, and it's like, all right, as an industry, we need to move on to the next biggest problem, which in this case happened to be introduced by the scaling solution, and that's fragmentation. But overall, like the roadmap is on track.
There we go.
Very optimistic about Ethereum's future.
Omni also recently launched a campaign called Unfuck Ethereum, which is very polite.
Are we going to bleep that, or are we?
I don't know.
Actually,
do we bleep
say
things on the
fuck?
show? You could say fuck. I think.
All right.
This is an adult show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people on crypto Twitter say way worse things.
That is confirmed.
You guys bleeped it though.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, why?
Manners,
I'm kidding. That's manners. Okay, so this campaign, why that name, and also like, what is the purpose of it?
I mean, this has been going on for like 6 months. And honestly, in my opinion, a lot of it is driven by two things. One, just like the obvious degradation of the user experience in the Ethereum ecosystem. Like it's literally harder to use it than it was a few years ago. We scaled, but it has come at a cost. And two, price is down for Ethereum. And so
we want price to go up.
Everybody wants Ethereum price to go up. That is just simply like reality.
Yeah.
And so it's manifested in a lot of like negative activity and like conversation around Ethereum. And we really think like one of the fundamental problems here is we were able to scale Ethereum, but it came at this cost of fragmentation. So it's like, if we solve the fragmentation problem, things will be fundamentally better. Is that going to make price go up? I don't know. I no comment, but so we launched Unfuck Ethereum because in our view, there is like a very clear technical roadmap forward for how this can be totally resolved. And we wanted to be spicy. So we said Unfuck Ethereum. Originally it was build together and our marketing team was talking. I mean, our marketing team is one person, but like
the team was talking.
The team.
In a mirror, I mean.
And we decided to go with something spicier, Unfuck Ethereum. And it's been, it worked out. Turned heads for sure.
For sure. On that front, do you feel like in the conversation of fragmentation that a lot of these L2s or people building in the Ethereum ecosystem actually want to work together, or there's still kind of like that cold shoulder where they're like, yeah, we want that, but we actually don't, they don't actually make an effort.
Yeah.
I think it's a cultural problem, and I think it's become a zero-sum game for developers and users between rollups because we have these silos where it is really hard for users to move from one rollup to the other. I think by like bringing down those walls, it can become a positive sum game where it doesn't matter where developers are, it doesn't matter where users are, because they can get to any other chain so easily.
And when we're talking about this, we're talking about Ethereum. We're not talking about other L1s out there.
Right. When I say chain, I'm kind of referring to the maxim that it's all just chains and bridges. Rollups are really chains under the hood. So yeah, talking about L2s.
What about other L1s out there? Do you see a world where Ethereum would intermingle more and there'd be more cross-chain activity on that front, or that's not really something that...
Yeah, I think it's undeniable that Solana is going to be here for a very, very long time. I think there's some other interesting developer ecosystems, but Solana, I think by far is the one that is really kind of like stressing out the Ethereum ecosystem in the sense that like, oh, there's serious competition. Like we actually really need to get on our game again. And so, yeah, I think the on-chain economy is going to exist. I think Ethereum is going to be a huge economy in itself, but there will be other ones like Solana.
Yeah. And how do builders play into this campaign and everything? Like what are they kind of doing within the Omni network?
Yeah, I mean, a huge part of how we're looking at things is that developers shouldn't have to think about all these different things. So really our goal with Omni in many ways is to abstract away the reality that there's like Solana, Optimism, Arbitrum base. Like people just want to build applications and get users. And so that's a lot of what our technical work is focused on. Just like, let's let people build an application and then just at the end source all the users and liquidity from all these different platforms without having to like think about deploying smart contracts across all these different things. So we're trying to simplify that for developers.
Yeah, when it comes to chain abstraction, I'm glad you brought that up. I feel like it's a conversation that becomes like more and more pertinent today than ever. Why do you think that is? Is it because of what we were talking about before, where it's like we've scaled to this point, but there's still this fragmentation? Or is it because the user experience just isn't where it should be?
Yeah, I think it's both, actually. I think the user experience was bad before. You had to think about these weird wallet things that you had to remember like 12 random words for, and like that you had to think about different assets, and sometimes there were different versions of assets and stuff. So it was already like not a good experience. And then we started to move into like a very multi-chain world, even within the Ethereum ecosystem, because there's multiple rollups, and it got way worse. And so I think this really drove it to the center of attention. Like, wow, this is a clear problem that we need to fix. It's hard even for people who have been here for years to use this stuff, let alone onboarding a new wave of users who have less technical sophistication. And so, yeah, we're super excited about this. We think this is a huge opportunity for the space. And again, it's just like we see the building blocks that need to be rolled out to production for this to be a far simpler thing for users to use. And so I think next year, 2025, is going to be like a huge year for chain abstraction.
Yeah. And the way Austin has phrased it in the past, like the history of interoperability, historically, we've forced that complexity onto users, and users need to bridge and think about RPCs and all this. We evolved into this mode where instead of it being on users, it's now on developers. Developers can build multi-chain applications and take that complexity away from users. But as it turns out, we've talked with over 150 teams. The developers don't want to think about that complexity either. So what we're doing is making it simple for users, simple for developers, and we introduce a third party in the middle that takes care of all of the complex finality risk and settlement. And those are solvers, or some people will call them market makers, they handle all of that complexity for both users and developers.
Yeah. I was laughing because it's like, of course, they don't want to deal with the complexity. Yeah. They're like, you guys do it. You take care of it. Out of all those teams that you guys have talked to, what are kind of some of the major themes or focuses that they are honing in on that you think are interesting?
I mean, it's honestly this was kind of interesting for us, thinking from like the business perspective, because we got, I think it was like over 40 teams to work with us on our test nets and stuff. But in looking at why they were working with us, it wasn't the actual reason. For the most part, it wasn't the actual reason we built the product of like source users and liquidity everywhere. It was all these teams that were trying to get like marketing support, introductions to investors, coaching on fundraising in general, all these kind of like auxiliary functions that we were offering. And so it was kind of difficult as a business to look at that and be like, well, we're building momentum in this direction, but like, is it for the reason we should be? And so this is when we started thinking far more about like this intent solver paradigm, where it's abstracted not just from the users, but from the developers as well, like all this complexity. But that was like a very interesting kind of place that we've reached as a business, where it's like, okay, we're seeing a decent amount of momentum here, but is it for the right reason?
Yeah, but I think that's like a positive, right? If they're coming and they feel like they could get supported by you guys, not just like, oh, we're building on Omni, but we also get access to XYZ, right?
It is, but like, it's easy to get led astray by things like that. And this is something that I don't know why companies in crypto don't pivot nearly as much as they do in like Web 2 and SaaS, but it's easy to get led astray by false signals like that. Like we set out with the mission to like make it easy for developers in the Ethereum ecosystem to access all the users. That was the goal. We didn't want to build a pipeline of companies that we were coaching for fundraising. That wasn't the goal. That was like the one problem that we set out to fix. And getting those mixed signals kind of made it difficult to see, like, is this really solving? And our conclusion was like, no, there's actually an easier path here.
Yeah, but by establishing those relationships, we actually got very candid feedback about the product, which helped us actually inform where we went next.
What was the feedback?
So building cross-chain applications turns out is really hard. Developers need to think about finality risk. They need to re-architect their applications. And get new audits, which takes like 4 months. And that's just an extended timeline, which when you're building a startup, you don't have 4 months to spend. And so those are the big ones. Another is platform risk. And one of the nice things about our new model is that developers actually don't have to think about any of this. They just deploy on a single chain, and they use our front-end SDK to accept deposits from anywhere. And they're not the ones taking the platform risk or finality risk. It's all of the solvers who are experts at that.
Yeah. An interesting data point on this is Layer 0 and Wormhole combined are like huge VC-backed projects, literally over $500 million raised by these two, have pushed this cross-chain dApps narrative for years. But like anybody listening, they can probably think of one, maybe two cross-chain dApps that have like really hit their stride and worked at scale. And this is because it's really hard to build these things. And most companies in crypto right now don't have product market fit. So taking a 4-month detour to go and make it so that it's easier for people to use your application across these different chains is not rational. And so a lot of people just don't do it.
So do you think it will be more accessible in the future then?
Yeah, it 100% will be, because I mean, the way that we're thinking about it is like that path takes 4 months. Just integrating our front end SDK takes 4 days, because you don't have to think about deploying smart contracts across all these different platforms. You just plug it into the front end.
So you guys are the faster way to get this done.
Correct.
Not bad. That's not a bad pitch. I'm sold, although I'm not building anything like that. Okay, so that's that. And then when it comes to your mainnet launch, kind of walk us through what the process was like leading up to this. And now that we're here, congrats.
Thank you.
Right around the holidays, interesting time to launch. Yeah. I feel like some people might have waited till 2025, but you guys were like, no, let's ship it.
Well, we decided to, the thinking was everybody's going to be thinking that. So let's just roll it out when there's like no noise going on. But yeah, launching a network at this scale takes so much work on the engineering and like security front. Like he built
go
it.
For
So
Mr. CTO, please.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. Building out the team has been a ton of fun. We launched 2 test nets in 2023, and we used a certain architecture which it's called Ethermint. It was built out in like 2021. We realized that it actually wasn't viable, so we went through this whole process of re-architecting our chain, and I mean that process was really fruitful. We came out of it with what we call Octane, our EVM architecture, which is now being used by teams like Story, and redesigned the cross-chain messaging protocol to actually hit the scale that we need, and have been testing it on what we call staging, testnet, and now mainnet. So yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely been. I look back at myself from a year, 2 years ago, and I think I was an idiot, and but I see that as a good thing. It's like I've grown a ton as an engineering leader and a leader in the company, and I've built out a really quality team. So
for sure,
I'm happy with where we are now.
What was something that surprised you during that time frame?
I'm actually starting a blog series on how to run an engineering team. I think it'll be useful for a lot of crypto teams. I guess some of the big things I've learned. I guess one that comes to mind is around hiring. I've probably interviewed. I've interviewed over 300 applicants at this point, reviewed over 1,000 resumes, and I would say about 20 to 30% of them are North Koreans. And actually, a friend of mine.
What?
Yeah.
How did they get an application done? And would you hire a North Korean?
No. To be clear,
for the record, no, absolutely not.
Okay. I had to ask.
I wrote a piece on this in.
Right.
It turns out they're all over, and they're trying to infiltrate like DeFi protocols and secure private keys and
it's not coming for like a positive aspect. Wow. Okay. You've got me stunned. Yeah. Very rarely happens.
I've learned how to filter out those resumes.
Yeah. Okay.
They all have like Goldman, JP Morgan on their resumes.
But it's not real. They didn't work there. There's no Goldman in North Korea. No. Damn. Okay. So on the hiring front, though, that's interesting, because something that I talk about a lot as a founder is like how tough it is to hire. And I know there's good talent out there, and like there's just a disconnect, right? So for you leading engineering teams, like what do you look for in engineers? What can they do better to stand out? I feel like that's probably valuable to some listening in.
I think probably the 2 key characteristics that I look for right now are low ego and high agency, which is a very rare combination. Because you can't have high ego. You can't have low agency. Like if you're low agency, that means you're not going to be getting things done. So agency is just has confidence and autonomy to get things done without asking for permission and just doing things. And then ego is like there are people who bring ego to the table, and
Tyler, I know what an ego is. I work in crypto.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so it's a fine line between those two. You need someone who's confident and autonomous, but doesn't bring an ego to the table. And it's hard to suss out in an interview process, but when we found people like that, it's really paid off.
How big is your engineering team?
We're about 10 right now.
Solid. Yeah. I think on the front of the testnet to mainnet, a lot of people don't really understand like what it takes to really get to this point. They're just like, oh, yay, mainnet launch. And it's like, that's that, right? So like, I see this as like the beginning of an extremely long marathon, if you would even call it that, right? Where do you two see it going from here? Like, what is the next step or roadmap? And then we could get into like bigger picture things.
You want to start with the technical side here?
Yeah, for sure. So we've broken down Omni into two core components, which make up what we call the Omni order flow engine. This is like what we see will handle all cross-chain transaction volume in the next couple years. That's the goal. And there are analogies to like Robinhood and market makers and payment for order flow. If you remember that saga back in, I don't know, was it 2021? So Robinhood makes these exclusive agreements with market makers to sell user trades to market makers. Market makers actually pay millions and millions of dollars for the right to execute user trades, which no one really knows what's going on there. It's very opaque. But the question is, of course, if market makers are paying for these trades, are they screwing users somehow? So the combination of our components actually are analogous to the order flow engine and agreements that Robinhood has with market makers, except it's all open. So anybody can participate as a user and send requests to the network. Anybody can participate as a market maker, kind of the rails on which these agreements are made. And everything happens in an open auction. So users are always getting the best execution. So how do we actually do that? There are two components, what we call Omni Core, which is cross-chain messaging and our EVM. And then SolverNet, which actually uses Omni Core for settlement, but it's the intents-based architecture. And what we've launched now is Omni Core. SolverNet will be launched iteratively throughout 2025. We're working with some early build partners. We announced Symbiotic about a month ago. So we're actually prototyping with them on testnet right now and excited to roll that out in 2025.
There we go. Austin?
Yeah. At large, why are we building this thing? Really, it's to position the ecosystem to move forward as things get easier to do things on chain. Users are not going to think about gas. They're not going to think about what chain they're connected to. All the complexity that it accompanies the like on-chain experience today is going to get abstracted away. And one data point here that like really communicates this is effectively 90% of people who hold crypto today have never done anything on chain. So this means that they just went to like Coinbase and bought Bitcoin, and that's crypto. That's their crypto experience. But a lot of people don't even realize that you can buy like treasury bills on chain right now. You can trade, you can take out loans, you can do all this different like activity, but it's really complex in order to do that for the average user. And so we're moving to a place as an industry where this is very left curve, but like users are just going to like click button. Like they're just going to be like, I want treasury bill, and they're going to click button. They're not going to think about what chain it's on or like how much the gas costs at that certain point in time. And so this order flow engine is necessary in order to get us to a point where users can operate at that level of simplicity.
Yeah. And just to complement that, Austin talks about latency and speed for users. I think latency is the great equalizer, and it's not specific to Web3. It's also like Web2 UX principles. Generally with apps and UX and Web2, the rule of thumb is if you can complete an action in like 2 seconds, then you retain 60% of users. If you can complete an action in less than 1 second, you retain like 90%. So our goal is to mirror this in Web3 and say, we want to enable any action on any chain in less than a second. So that's where we want to go with our technical vision and how actually make it a reality. And I think we can make like Web3 experiences just as good, if not better.
So do you see it as an opportunity to tap into mainstream audiences, or like first crypto native ones and then you go for mainstream after?
Yeah, it'll initially be crypto users. So the first teams that we're going to be rolling this out with are like applications that are out there in the wild today. But this is all building the foundation for how developers will be able to create experiences that are not crypto native targeted, where users can just like not have any idea or like any comprehension of how blockchains work. And they just like open a website and like click around and, oh, they happen to get an NFT in the process of this, but they don't even have to think about it as an NFT. So all this is necessary to get to that point where you have this abstracted experience for these more mainstream users.
Yeah. I mean, when you say that, it makes me think of like Blackbird, if you guys have heard of that. It's like a a restaurant pass, but it's really just an NFT. But they don't call it an NFT.
Good. There's no need.
There is no need. I agree. And same with like Off the Grid or Polymarket. Like for us, we know those things were created on like blockchain technology, but for mainstream audiences, they're just like, oh, it's a prediction market. It's a video game.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is all about. Like when I say I'm using a website, I don't say I'm using like the back end of it. It's built on this. Like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, I'm using Postgres, right? Like, nobody needs to think about those things.
Yeah.
And I think in 2021, NFT was this, like SNL even did a skit around NFTs. But now I feel like it's kind of a slur to a certain degree. People are like,
it's
NFT,
a negative connotation.
Yeah, like people are like, I don't want NFTs. Like, I don't want to think about this.
Yeah.
But people won't need to. It'll just be like your character or like your gun
or pass, or something.
Pass, yeah.
Your gun, your in-game gun.
Yeah.
Austin.
I mean, off the grid, yeah.
Not like a real gun.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay, from the developer side of things though, we kind of talked about it before, but like what do you see developers building on Omni right now that maybe appeals to this category where it's like, hey, we don't know it's built on crypto or whatever, but it could actually appeal to mainstream audiences, not something that's just like financially driven. And if there isn't anything that's coming to mind specifically, what would you two like to see built?
I think it's going to be the latter half of 2025 that the industry will be at a point where you have achieved more of this chain abstraction type experience that will enable experiences like that. So definitely for the first half of 2025, we're going to be focused on crypto applications. That's definitely going to be the case. I personally, though, thinking about like, okay, what do we want to see in the latter half of 2025? I want to see more applications like Polymarket, Off the Grid, Blackbird. In every previous cycle, we've had, around like 5, maybe a few more like very original, very cool and exciting applications. There is a lot queued up to go extremely well this cycle. But the one missing variable right now, in my view, is a number of useful applications that like prove to everyday people like, hey, there's something here. This is like an exciting new thing. It's making progress as a technology. We made a little bit of progress on that dimension this cycle, but there's still more work to be done there.
What's your take?
I think one that a lot of people are excited about, including myself as a former machine learning engineer, is just AI agents. And it's not easy. Actually, it's impossible for them to get a bank account, and they have crypto rails who'll be able to move money around. And we've seen this explode in a very, it's an insane way. It's kind of Black Mirror-esque, where there are now Twitter AI agents that are tweeting and launching tokens. Not sure where it's going to head, but I'm excited to watch.
Yeah, I think the whole AI agent thing and the tokens and everything is just like baffling.
Yeah, it's nuts.
I can't wrap my mind around it.
Every time I explain to my normie friends, like
normie friends.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them. Like there are AIs that are rich in crypto. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's just like they hold the crypto. Like they're actually really, really rich, and they're just like AIs, and they tweet at people and they talk with them. And that is a super sci-fi sounding thing, but it's definitely something that has like clicked with these people. Like what, like rich AIs. So yeah, very excited to see where that goes as well.
Yeah, it's weird. Like the unlock of what a private key really is has only really happened explaining it through the lens of an AI agent right now.
Yeah. I think also people think when they hear that, they're like, well, I'm just going to launch an AI agent and get rich off that. It's like,
course.
Okay, and you're going to launch an NFT project.
Cases.
You're going to get rich off that. And so on and so forth, right? Yeah. You brought up debanking, and that made me think of something that Austin has posted about on Twitter. He puts long threads out there. If anyone wants to read them, they're helpful, they're smart. But you talked about what it's like being a founder in the US.
Yeah.
And I think this conversation, had we had it a few months ago, would have been very different. But today, it might be a little more optimistic given the new administration coming in 2025 is more pro-crypto than maybe the last one. How do you kind of look at operating in the US versus the past, like today versus even a few months ago?
I mean, honestly, we had a very real conversation when we were starting this. We were like, straight up, the US does not like crypto. We might need to leave this country if like things get to a certain point. Like if it gets to that point, are we going to do that, or are we going to fold and just kind of like shut down the business? And we aligned like all right, fuck it, we're going to Asia if that happens. Like,
not bad.
Yeah, I mean, but like having said that, we're both very American.
Yes.
Honestly, that's one thing that like, I don't know, well, like when we're thinking about core values, we have similar backgrounds and we're both very American. Like, I love this country. It is messy, crazy, chaotic, but I'm honestly so grateful to be an American. And seeing the progress on the regulatory front, I literally feel it at an emotional level of just like, wow, I like don't feel like I'm going to have to leave my home country anymore because of like some regulation that drops, because the person who is the SEC chair at this point in time doesn't want to see this technology thrive. So for me, it's been a huge just like, wow, I'm super excited about what a pro crypto America can look like, because obviously we work in it and I want to see this technology thrive because I think it's good for people and just personal freedoms at large. But also from a thinking as an American and not like a crypto entrepreneur, I think this can be extremely good for America, especially in kind of differentiating against the Chinese strategy when it comes to like digital currencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I've had some friends ask about this, like, what can you really do now that you couldn't before, or what might you be able to do? Like, it's actually not really about what I can do versus what I don't have to do anymore. We've spent an ungodly amount of time and energy thinking about how to structure Omni and legal and compliance. It's like, actually we can spend way more time building our product and building something that people want, which feels great.
Yeah, just being able to build and not worry about whether or not it's like teetering on the edge of whatever gray area they've composed that month.
And everybody wants to be compliant. Nobody wants, maybe some people
not everyone,
break the
but
law,
most like positive builders in the space, I would argue, want to be compliant.
And there's a huge, this will probably go on for a bit, but hopefully some regulatory clarity moves forward where people don't have to pay lawyers hundreds of thousands of dollars. It kind of reminds me of my brother started a company in Spain and he had to put like tens of thousands of dollars into just getting a company there. Whereas in America, you can spend a couple $100s and get a corporation. Right now, we're kind of in a state like that for crypto, where there's so many question marks that you need to pay really expensive lawyers a ton of money just to start a company. And that's a huge friction point, and it like really stifles innovation.
Yeah, 100%. It's a major barrier to entry. I feel like it is a pretty optimistic outlook right now across the space, but there's still concerns, I would imagine, right? Like, what are maybe your outlooks from a standpoint for next year? I know Tyler said like, oh, maybe you guys could focus on building more instead of like stressing out about like what might be behind the curtain. But from that side, and then also like, what are the concerns still?
I mean, in my view, it's just vibes right now. It's like, okay, things look good.
We're sussing the vibes out.
Yeah, like, but Trump has not been like formally inaugurated into office yet. And so there's a ton that needs to be done to actually like provide the clarity that people need. And so right now, I think everybody is like optimistic, and that's really the most that they can be because this new administration is just not in power yet.
Yeah. How do you guys look at adoption from a global perspective? Obviously, you're American. We are based here, but Omni is not just like an American entity. You guys have a global presence, as do many crypto companies. So how do you kind of look at it from like a regional perspective?
I mean, I think most Americans are very cynical about crypto, and it comes from a place of privilege that we have a functioning government and financial system. I know people here like to complain about the government a lot, but like objectively, we have one of the most well-functioning governments in the world. And so that kind of puts us in a place where we think about it as gambling and meme coins and NFTs, because we don't actually need an alternative financial system. Like, ours works like well enough. But for people in nations where just for many years it has been like double-digit inflation, sometimes like triple, quadruple-digit inflation, there are many countries across the world whose governments are extremely corrupt and fail them in many different ways. And their financial system just like doesn't really work. And this holds back the development of the nation at large. And so I think as an actual utility, we're going to see crypto adopted much more widely in nations where their governments have failed them. Over time, though, I think this will be adopted globally. But I do think that that's one thing that Americans miss for the most part. They just think it's gambling, but like that comes from a place of like privilege and not having to deal with these problems.
Yeah. A refreshing anecdote. Well, maybe not refreshing, kind of sad actually, is one of our contractors from the very early Rift days, actually. He was based in Lagos, and he needed to get paid in USDC because he got paid to a bank account when he goes to the airport, police officers stop him, shake him down, and open his phone, go into his bank account, and transfer themselves money. So
That's crazy.
USDC was the only way to preserve.
Because they didn't know about the crypto wallet.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to make a joke, but
Yeah,
it does come off as a joke.
Yeah.
But that's something I hear about too. And it is American privilege where we're like, why isn't my like little meme coin going up? But like in the grand scheme of things, there is utility to this from the perspective of like, if I get paid something in my bank account, I know as an American, the money will stay relatively the same, like inflation aside. But when you're in other countries where there's so much like hyperinflation, the amount of it could be changed by the time you go and like bring it to the bank or something.
Yeah, I mean, we both come from like very cypherpunk values. We want to build a self-sovereign society. That means people can opt into a financial system and not be subject to these tyrannical governments that unfortunately are all over the world.
Yeah. 100%.
Which is like a little crazy stance for Americans, but like that's very real for actually a majority of people throughout the world. Like we're very fortunate as Americans, so we don't have to think about these things.
What made you guys start thinking about these things?
What got you in this rabbit hole?
I was working in machine learning specifically for like financial markets, and I was building machine learning algorithms for like lending and borrowing desks at banks. And then I found Compound on chain in like 2019, and I was like, oh my God, this 300 lines of smart contract code is doing what this entire vertical at a bank is doing. This is pretty awesome. Go down the rabbit hole. Started reading, Ethereum white paper, a lot of the crypto cypherpunk OG stories, meditations on Moloch, and all that kind of stuff. And being very American, like Austin said, I think a lot of that messaging resonates with core American values, freedom, prosperity, and independence. And so, that's why I'm optimistic about crypto in the US, because it is very aligned with how we see the world.
Yeah. I originally got in 2017, I started learning about Ethereum, started mining it, buying it, and teaching myself how to program Solidity on it. And honestly, a lot of it just clicked. I remember one of the first things I built back then was a little voting system, kind of like what most people would call a DAO today. But I was just super sold. I was like, we're going to run governments on this thing. And that's still a ridiculous thing to say today, but I honestly firmly believe that a lot of people think about these systems as cryptocurrency. But it's not that. It's just like they are systems of record. In many ways, they're giving people just digital property rights today. We live in an internet where Facebook and Google hold all of our like data. And these systems, like currencies, are just one application of them. They're just neutral ways to facilitate economic activity at large, and just say who owns what. And so, it will take decades for that to really play out. But I do see these systems continuing to like eat into the social services that most governments are offering today. And that sounded awesome to me. And so, I was super sold. I was like, I'm going to build a crypto company. I have no idea what it's going to do, but I'm going to build something. And so, that was my first company. But
then you got VCs to give you money.
Then I did do that. Yeah.
Kidding. But maybe that's kind of the path of it. Okay. So I mentioned this earlier, and I would kind of like to wrap it up on this note. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done for both of you and Omni and everyone in between. What would you say is the North Star if you could look back a year, 5 years and be like, we did that. That's what I wanted.
I mean,
so thinking forward 5 years?
Yeah. Sorry, did I say back? Well, I'm saying like looking forward, you're going to look back on the past year. That's what I meant. It's all the same. Go ahead, Tyler.
No, I asked that because looking back 5 years or 3 years, vision for what we were going to build has changed and changed and gotten better with time. And I'm excited with where we are today, where I want to go, and what I mentioned earlier, which is we want users to be able to interact with any chain, make any action in less than a second. And if we can solve that, I think we can solve the fragmentation problem in Ethereum.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this stuff is going to evolve at a far faster rate than most people imagine. Like right now, it's not locked in, but it's an open question. Like, is the US going to buy Bitcoin as part of its like strategic reserve? That even a few years ago would have been an insane thing to even think about. Obviously it's not locked in, but the fact that there are like proposals for this out there from senators is nuts. So I think the next 5 years, we're likely going to ride this bull market. Things going to crash again. There's going to be more crime. It's just going to like, everybody's going to call it a scam again. It's going to be a bear market and then it'll come back. At that point in time, I really, I want to grow the on-chain economy and grow the number of people in the world that are using the on-chain economy. And, if they want to mess around with like meme coins or whatever, cool. But like what I think is really, really exciting is that even today in like serious size, we're seeing people in Argentina escape that currency into stable coins. And so there are very real utilities that are being provided to people across the world today. And I think just the opportunity to play a role in that over the next 5 years is something that's super, super exciting to me.
Yeah, 100%. Lastly, can you leave us with a piece of advice, something that you two have carried with you throughout your years in crypto?
You're joining us on this one.
You want a piece of advice from me?
Yeah.
All right, I'll think.
Yeah. I'll give you two. One, don't start a company.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Way harder than you think.
Hey, now you guys started one.
Yeah, actually, most founders I talk to say the same thing. They're like, I would have never started a company if I knew how hard it was going to be. But now that I've done it, I will definitely do it again. That's probably how I feel. But two, if you do start a company, find a great co-founder. We've been through a journey together. It's practically a marriage. And there's been like terrible times where we're yelling at each other in a park, but we both have the same vision. We know where we're going and we know we're
this is your together. Couples therapy.
Yeah. All right. The one piece of advice for me. Probably just like don't overreact in the short term. People are seeing prices go up a ton right now and they're probably going to put more money into crypto than they should. And then prices are going to go down again and they're going to freak out and then sell everything at the bottom. If you're going to participate in crypto as technology, understand that it's like a many year effort. And this stuff does have the potential to literally change like geopolitical structures across the world. But it will take time. And so if you're going to be involved in crypto, just have patience, zoom out. If you're on Twitter, everything happens on like an hourly basis. It's so noisy and it's hard to just like zoom out and see where things are really going. But if you just have a long-term orientation on things, where we're going is extremely exciting.
Yeah, 100%. Love that.
All right.
You want me to go? Yep. I was trying to get out of it. I guess my advice right now would be to be level-headed. Like as a founder as well, I feel like, and this is something Austin actually has talked about with me in the past, not on a podcast, but in casual conversations where it's like, you're going to have like a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but you should just stay like very neutral throughout it all. Yeah. Because like you can embrace, and that's not to say don't enjoy the great moments or don't, acknowledge the bad ones, but just know that you're going to probably see it through everything. So I like that. That's how I think. Yeah.
One of the things I've told our team is, things are going really well right now. With Omni, we're launching Mainnet. We're hitting huge milestones. We grew our engineering team recently. The industry at large is doing well.
Exactly.
Bottle up this feeling because it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
Like, let's remember these moments when we're in the middle of a bear market and it feels like it's never going to end, but it will. This comes in cycles and we'll get through it. Just bottle up those happy moments.
Yeah. Take a screenshot and then you know what that means. If you take a screenshot, gotta sell. Anyways, Tyler, Austin, thank you so much for coming on today. It was an absolute pleasure and congrats on the Mainnet launch.
Thank you.
Great being here.